What's up, guys? Back here with another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the NBA offseason. I'm going to be doing a grade book. I'm going to start off with the Eastern Conference. So just before I get into every team, I will say that everything I'm talking about in this video is from nosebleedsports.com right here. So go check them out, okay? Everything that I'm going to be talking about is detailed in an article on nosebleedsports.com. It'll have every addition, every subtraction that every team made, along with everything detailed out in full writing. So go check them out. So to start off, I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks. They had a great year last year, obviously. Giannis Antetokounmpo won MVP. And I'm going to give them a B+ on the offseason. They did re-sign Brook Lopez and Chris Middleton, which are huge additions. They also got Wesley Matthews and Robin Lopez, so they got the Lopez brothers. But they did have some key losses, which kind of like took away from them getting an A. They did lose Malcolm Brogdon, which is a guy that is a huge contributor to them in the past few years, and former Rookie of the Year. They also lost George Hill, who's a great backup point guard to Eric Bledsoe. And they lost Nikola Mirotic, who went back to Europe, which I thought was pretty interesting. So Milwaukee Bucks, they get a B+. We're going to move on now to the NBA champions, the Toronto Raptors, which feels weird to say, but they had a great year last year. Obviously, they went all in, trading DeMar DeRozan, and they got Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green, but they weren't able to keep him for more than a year. Obviously, they got what they wanted out of them, getting a championship, but, they did lose those guys, so I'm going to give the Raptors a C+ here. They did kind of strengthen up their bench. They got Patrick McCaw, they kept him, and they also got Stanley Johnson, who kind of has been a bust so far in the league. And they got Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and they got Cameron Payne. So their bench is going to be pretty strong. Again, that's kind of what they've been really strong at the past few seasons. But they did lose, Finals MVP, and they lost Danny Green. So I got to give them a C+. Now we're going to move on to the 76ers. I'm going to give them a B-. They did lose Jimmy Butler, J.J. Redick, Boban, and T.J. McConnell. So that's a lot of the heart and soul of their team, along with, a great shooter and a guy that they can go to at the end of the game in Jimmy Butler. But they also made a lot of interesting acquisitions, especially getting Al Horford. Kind of seemed to be the kryptonite of their team, too. He was really good at guarding Embiid kind of all year long. They're going to be a big team. They're going to be great defensively. But I'm giving them a B- because they lost a lot of guys that were huge contributors for them the past few years, kind of going through the process. Now we're going to move over to the Boston Celtics. They had a really interesting offseason. Of course, they had all those draft picks, and they kind of drafted all point guards, and then they signed Taco Fall. I think he's going to actually end up being a really good sleeper rookie, and also Carson Edwards to go along with him. He had a great summer league. Kind of the big thing is that they got Kemba Walker to replace Kyrie Irving. I think they're kind of interchangeable, so when you look at the other moves, they did lose Terry Rozier and Marcus Morris and Al Horford. So they did lose a lot, but I think they're going to kind of be in the same place that they were last year. The next team we're going to be talking about is the Indiana Pacers. They got Malcolm Brogdon from the Bucks, and overall, I'm going to give them a B. They got TJ Warren, Jeremy Lamb, and the thing about Jeremy Lamb is people don't realize he had the same numbers as Jason Tatum last year. Obviously, Jason Tatum is younger, and they kind of say that he has more potential, but I like to think that Jeremy Lamb is pretty good, especially because he's a Husky. They lost Tyreek Evans to suspension, Thad Young, Bojan Bogdanovic, they lost him too. But overall, they didn't really lose. I think they still got a lot better. I think Malcolm Brogdon and Victor Oladipo, I think if you look at them, you'd see that there could be a low-key, great backcourt in the Eastern Conference. Next, we're going to go over to the Brooklyn Nets. This does pain me to say this, but I'm giving them an A+. They got the two superstars. They got KD. They got Kyrie. To go along with it, they got a bunch of bench pieces, including Trey Burke. I don't know what they're going to do with DeAndre Jordan, but they also got Garrett Temple and Wilson Chandler. So, they got a lot better. I know they lost, D'Lo and Ed Davis, Allen Crabble, those guys. But I still overall think that when you get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, it's going to be awesome for them. KD obviously is probably going to be out for probably the whole season next year, but overall they still won this offseason with an A+. Next, we're going to move on to the Orlando Magic. They did make it to the playoffs where they lost to Toronto in the first round, so they had a good year, but overall they didn't really do much this offseason. They made sure to keep Vucevic, which is huge for them. They also kept Terrence Ross, and they got Al-Farouq Aminu, who was pretty good. But other than that, they really didn't do anything huge to actually improve their team. They just kind of kept it where it was. They did get rid of Timofey Mozgov by waiving him, but still, they didn't really get much better. Now we're going to go over to Detroit. Again, very similar to Orlando, who got a C. The Pistons, I gave them a C minus. They didn't really get much better either. They stayed in the exact same place, and they really did need to make moves. They got Markieff Morris, and they got Derrick Rose. I think Derrick Rose could end up sneaking his way into the starting five. But the whole team really revolves around Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. Again, another UConn Husky. But I don't really know how good they're going to be. I don't really think they made any moves to really improve their team. So, yeah, they get a C minus. Now, this next team, I really think lost the entire offseason. They did a terrible job. They got much worse. And that would be the Charlotte Hornets. I gave them an F. Now, although they got Terry Rozier, who I really just think is like a backup point guard, they didn't get anybody else significant to really improve their team. I mean, Terry Rozier, I don't really trust being a starting point guard in the NBA every day with no other pieces around him to help. And obviously they lost their franchise player and Kemba Walker, and they also lost Jeremy Lamb. Tony Parker retired. Shout out to Tony Parker. He had a great career. But overall, Hornets did a terrible job. They didn't get any better even though they lost Kemba Walker. They could have gone out and at least gotten some young pieces. I think they kind of overpaid, hit the panic button on Terry Rozier, so they get an F. The next team is the Miami Heat. They got Jimmy Butler, and Tyler Hero looked awesome in the Summer League, so he could be another steal of the draft. And then obviously, they lost Dwayne Wade to retirement, another guy who had a great career. They also lost Hassan Whiteside, who is kind of the big core of the team the past few years, even though they've only been a mediocre team. But I think when you get Jimmy Butler, you immediately improve. He's a guy who's going to hit a shot at the end of the game. He wants to win. He's a scorer. I do think it was a curious move by Jimmy Butler to go to the Heat, only because he could have gone to a different situation where he could have almost guaranteed himself a spot in the finals, and instead he wanted to be the man. I don't know how good he's going to be, but I still can't fault the Heat for going after Jimmy Butler, so I'm going to give them a B. The next team I'm going to talk about is the Washington Wizards. They're another team like the Hornets who really didn't do much. I'm giving them a D. I mean, really the best player they got is Isaiah Thomas, and he's such a question mark. They also got Admiral Schofield in the draft out of Tennessee, who's pretty good, but I don't know. They lost Jabari Parker, they lost Trevor Ariza, lost Dwight Howard, who really didn't do much for them last year. But I don't know. They stayed in the same spot, but since they were in such a bad spot last year, the whole weight of the team really revolves around Bradley Beal and how far he can carry them on his own, with John Wall being out. So I really just don't think the Wizards did a good job supporting Bradley Beal this offseason. Next thing I want to talk about is the Atlanta Hawks, who I think had a really under-the-radar offseason. They got Alan Crabb, they got Evan Turner, Jabari Parker, and then obviously they drafted DeAndre Hunter up in the lottery. So I think they did a great job. They kind of saw what they had in Trae Young last year and also John Collins. So they know the guys that they want to build around. Also, recently, they just got Vince Carter for probably his last and 22nd season. I mean, they did lose Taurean Prince and Kent Bazemore, but overall, I think that the Hawks did a really good job with the moves that they made. They had 2 top 10 picks. They got Cam Reddish. So I think overall, they really did do a great job. So they get a B minus for their underrated great offseason. The Bulls, they did okay this offseason. They didn't really lose anybody important. They only really lost Robin Lopez and Walter Lemon Jr. And they did do a good job. They got Thad Young, and they did draft Kobe White out of UNC, who I think has a chance to be a really good point guard in the NBA, but he's still a big question mark. I think the sleeper pickup that the Bulls made was Luke Cornett. He was on the Knicks last year, and he was really good at blocking shots, and he could knock down a 3 as a 7-footer at a pretty high rate. So I think the Bulls are going to be pleasantly surprised with their acquisition of Luke Cornett. But overall, I'll give them a C+. They didn't do much to put themselves into the playoffs, but I do like the pick of Kobe White, and I like how they got Thad Young as a vet and Luke Cornett. Next, we're going to talk about the Cavaliers. I give them a C because they basically did nothing. The only thing they did is they got Darius Garland and Kevin Porter, which I think are two great draft picks, especially Kevin Porter. I think he fell much further in the draft than most people were expecting. I think Cavs fans are going to be pleasantly surprised with Kevin Porter. I think Darius Garland goes well with Colin Sexton in the backcourt. So overall, I just give them a C. They're just staying the course of the rebuild at this point. They didn't go out and make any moves. I'd still like to see them trade Kevin Love, try to get at least a little bit younger, some picks for it. Either way. Last team in this video I'm going to talk about is my New York Knicks. Now, I'm going to hold off on the letter grade that I gave them and explain kind of what they did. They missed out on every big name free agent possible. They didn't get Kyrie. They didn't get KD. They didn't even get a meeting with Kawhi Leonard because they canceled it. But they did go out. They got Julius Randle coming off of a career year. They got Marcus Morris, who's good. They got Bobby Portis, who's shown a lot of potential. And they also got a bunch of other guys in addition to the third overall pick where they got RJ Barrett, who, whether he's a bust or not, then that was the right pick to make. They also got Ignas Brazdeikis out of Michigan, who's the Big Ten Freshman of the Year, who I think is a great second-round pick. The Knicks have hit on their second-round picks, it seems, the past few years with Damian Dotson and Mitchell Robinson, who are two key guys. And one guy that they got rid of, who they had to get rid of, was Lance Thomas, who I just think is probably the worst player in the NBA of all time. I don't know how he was on the Knicks for so long, where he just did nothing productive. He couldn't shoot. I will give him credit for being a good hustle player, but he was just garbage at basketball, and it was a pain to watch him play. So I'm glad that they made room for the actual good players on the team to play. Also, all the guys, with the exception of Julius Randle, are only on one-year contracts with a team option for a second year. So they can trade these guys or move on for them. They're not cap-locked in any way. They can still go out and make moves. They have a ton of room to make roster moves and get better. So I just hope that they stay the course of the rebuild. So overall, I'm giving the Knicks a B. Even though they missed out on those free agents, I still think they made great moves this offseason under the radar. Of course, I am biased. I am a Knicks fan, and I am hopeful for the future. Maybe foolishly so. So overall, thank you for watching this video. This is the offseason gradebook for the Eastern Conference and the NBA. I will be releasing a Western Conference video coming shortly. Again, all this information that I'm talking about is on nosebleedsports.com. I'll leave the link in the description, so go check out nosebleedsports.com. Again, wearing the shirt. So also like and subscribe for more content. I know I haven't been uploading lately, but I'm going to try to get back into uploading more content, especially talking about the NBA and the MLB. And maybe I'm going to be doing some 2K20 also. So thank you. Like and subscribe.